Okay, so you know that feeling when you're just like dying to get the gist of something? Like something complex and interesting?
Yeah.
But you don't have hours to read a whole book or anything.
Right, yeah.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of this this deep dive we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all about that.
So today, we're going to be like diving into this book
Okay.
that is already like making waves, even though it just came out April 1st,
Wow, so brand new.
2025. It is El Loco de Dios en el fin del mundo
Okay.
by Javier Cercas.
So you heard this one?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit about it. I'm so intrigued because it's like this really wild story.
Yeah, it is, right?
We've got some info here from the Amazon page, like the Spanish Amazon Diaris, and some editorial notes, descriptions of the book. And I think what we should try to do today is figure out, like, what are the key insights here? Because it's about faith and power, which, you know, those are big things.
Yeah, and it's all coming from this, like, really unique personal quest.
Exactly.
So just to set the stage.
Okay, we're talking about Javier Cercas, who describes himself, and I'm going to try to get this right because it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Ateo, anti-clerical, laicista militante, racionalista contumaz, un impío riguroso.
Wow, he really went for it.
So, like, that's
a statement.
That's a pretty strong statement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that sounds like someone who's not just like, oh, you know, I don't really go to church.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like, you know, separation of church and state, strong rationalist.
Absolutely.
And this guy ends up on a plane to Mongolia with the Pope.
Okay, so wait, the guy who just said all those things is going to Mongolia.
Pope Francis.
Oh.
Which I feel like there's a story here. Like, how did that even happen? And like, why Mongolia?
Well, and Mongolia, I love that you brought up Mongolia.
Yeah.
Because that adds this whole other, like, element to it.
Right.
Because Mongolia, in 2023, when this trip actually took place, had a Catholic community of like 1,500 people.
Okay, so not exactly like, it's not exactly like
the Vatican
City.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got this outspoken atheist going to this remote place with the Pope.
So what's going on here?
Yeah. So the why is so interesting because it really boils down to like a very basic human thing.
Okay.
Which is a mother's love and a son trying to please his mother, basically.
Yeah.
So Cercas's mother, she's a woman of faith. She wants to know, will I see my husband again in the afterlife?
Oh, wow.
And her atheist son, who's our author, decides that he is going to get that answer straight from the Pope.
I mean,
he's going to ask Pope Francis about resurrection, about eternal life, and take it back to mom.
Wow, that's dedication. I have to say, like, even as someone who, you know, may not share his beliefs, that's very relatable, right? Like wanting to...
It's such a human thing.
Yeah, comfort your mother.
To do that for your mom. It's actually, if it's something she believes in so strongly.
Yeah.
And so Cercas, he actually describes it in this great line. Y aquí, un loco sin Dios persiguiendo al loco de Dios hasta el fin del mundo.
Wow. Okay, so just to translate that for everyone, here's a madman without God chasing after God's madman to the end of the world.
That's pretty great.
I love that.
Right. I mean, that tells you...
I mean, that tells you a lot right there.
That this is not...
Yeah, this is not your average...
An average book.
Travelogue?
Yeah, no, this is not.
Or a theological discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be something very different.
Yeah, it seems like we're getting a very unique perspective here.
And I think the Vatican realized that this was going to be something unique too, because they gave Cercas this crazy access.
Okay, so they knew what they were getting into.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, think about it. You've got a staunch atheist embedded with the Pope on an official trip.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day.
Like, you're not going to see that on CNN.
No, definitely not. I mean, that kind of behind-the-scenes look, that's what we all want, right? To really understand what's going on.
Yeah, and this is probably what contributes to, like, how the book is structured.
Okay, how so?
So it blends all these different genres, which is really interesting. So you've got this, like, travel chronicle aspect, right?
Okay.
It is about the trip to Mongolia.
Right.
But then it's also a personal essay where you're really getting into Cercas, his head, and how he's feeling about this whole thing.
Okay, so we get the external journey and the internal journey.
Yeah, and then it's also partly biography of Pope Francis.
Oh, interesting.
As seen through Cercas's eyes, though.
Okay, so an outsider's perspective.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's also like an intellectual autobiography.
Wow, so many layers.
I know, so it's like...
So it's not just about the Pope, then. It's about how Cercas himself is wrestling with these big questions.
Exactly.
And that kind of mirrors our own curiosity, right? Like, why are we even talking about this? It's fascinating.
And it's not even like it's a separate section. It's all, like, interwoven.
Okay, so how does that work for the reader? It sounds like it could be a lot to keep track of.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually the beauty of it, is that it's giving you all these different ways to connect with the material.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So, you have the travel log, like, okay, here we are in Mongolia. Very specific.
Right. Grounded in a place.
Yeah. And then the personal essay, this is how I'm feeling about this. This is what I'm thinking about.
So you get that personal connection.
Yeah. And then the biography.
Yeah.
Okay, here's who the Pope is, but from this, like, very unique point of view.
So it's not just like a Wikipedia entry on Pope Francis.
No.
It's like an interpretation, right?
Exactly.
Of a very particular lens.
Yeah. And then that intellectual autobiography.
Right.
Like, okay, how do my own beliefs compare to this? How is this making me question things?
It's prompting you to think, to engage on a deeper level.
So it's not just about this trip. It's about so much more.
Yeah, definitely. And from what I've seen, some of the big themes that come up are faith and eternal life. Obviously, those are big ones with the whole premise of the book.
Right.
But it also goes deeper than that. It talks about the nature of early Christianity, like what did that actually look like? And then the historical relationship between the church and power.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Especially in Spain, because that's Cercas's background.
Right.
Because it's like he's bringing his own personal history into this too.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Mongolia is the backdrop for all of this.
Right, because you wouldn't think of Mongolia as like a super religious place.
Right, yeah, not really.
It's not the center of any major religion, so it's interesting that it's there.
It is, and I think what it does is it forces us to think about the spiritual and the transcendent.
Okay.
And like what that means for human beings.
Right. Because maybe in a place like Mongolia, where there's not this like established religious structure, those questions become even more prominent.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like we were just talking about how the book explores all these different things. But you also have to remember that Cercas is right there with Pope Francis.
Oh, right. Like he's not just reading about him.
He's interacting with him. He's watching him. So the book gives you these insights into Pope Francis's personality.
Okay.
And like what he does, how he acts.
So it's like a portrait of the Pope.
Yeah. And it draws on...
So a very specific lens.
Yes. But it also draws on his history, as a Jesuit.
Right, from Argentina.
In Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
And his focus, which we all know about, like helping the poor and marginalized people.
Yeah. Pope Francis is very much known for that.
Right. And I think this is where the Loco de Dios thing comes in.
God's madman.
Yeah. Because it's not just a catchy title.
Right.
It's like... It's highlighting that he's someone who's willing to disrupt things.
Okay.
To challenge tradition if it means getting to those core values.
So he's not afraid to shake things up a bit.
No.
To get to what he sees as the heart of the matter.
Right. And like, can you imagine this atheist
having those conversations?
Asking the Pope about the afterlife.
Oh, I would love to be a fly on the wall for those conversations.
Right. Like, what was that like?
That's what I want to know.
Like, how did that go?
Yeah.
And it sounds like the book does give you a glimpse into that.
Okay. Yeah.
Not just the formal speeches and stuff.
Right.
But those personal interactions.
That's what makes it so interesting.
And that's how we really see, how Cercas's views might be changing.
Right.
And how the Pope reacts to someone who has these, like, totally different beliefs.
Because that's a big part of it too, right? Like, how do you engage with someone who sees the world so differently from you?
Exactly. And it's not just about this personal journey on the Pope.
Okay.
It also reflects more broadly on faith itself. Like faith in our modern world.
Because that's something a lot of people are grappling with.
Yeah, and it all starts from this very specific personal question.
Right.
But then it just expands outward.
To these larger societal issues.
Yeah.
So it's using that individual story as a way to look at something much bigger.
Exactly. And the book... It doesn't just like gloss over the Catholic Church.
Okay, so it's not just a pro-church book.
Oh, no.
It's more nuanced than that.
It analyzes the church as an institution.
Okay.
And it looks at its history. Especially, in Spain with power structures.
Which makes sense given Cercas's background, right? Like Spain's history is so intertwined with the Catholic Church.
Right. And he's like a secular intellectual.
Yeah.
Examining this through the lens of his encounter with the Pope.
So it's like a fresh perspective on this complex relationship.
Yeah.
And it's potentially a critical one too, right?
Yes.
He's not afraid to ask those tough questions.
And it seems like what he might be suggesting is that the church needs to like reconnect with its original values.
Okay, so almost like a back to basics approach.
Yeah, like what was Christianity really about at its core?
So a return to those fundamental principles.
Right. And maybe Pope Francis is the one to do it.
It's interesting.
Like maybe he's the leader who can make that transformation happen.
Because he's already known for focusing on those core values. Right?
Yeah, like humility and solidarity and helping those who are marginalized.
Yeah, it's a very different approach to leadership.
And it's really relevant to a lot of conversations that are happening right now.
Exactly. Like, what is the role of religious institutions in society today, especially when you have this rising secularization, this crisis of trust in institutions,
right? And
yet people are still searching for meaning.
Yes.
So it's like this book steps right into that tension.
It does. And, I think for a lot of people, this book could be really valuable in terms of just like starting conversations.
Okay, how so?
Well, because you've got someone who's so openly skeptical.
Right.
Engaging with the literal head of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, you don't get that every day.
No.
Yeah.
And it creates this space where you can talk about things that are sometimes really hard to talk about.
Right, because those conversations can be so sensitive and divisive. But seeing it through Cercas's eyes, you might be more open to hearing those different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's not just about religion either.
Okay.
It's about how we engage with people who have totally different beliefs than us.
Right.
Like, how do we find common ground? How do we understand each other?
So it's about building empathy, really.
Yeah, and there's this idea that the book might also contribute to these discussions about, the role of religion as like a counterweight to power. And a source of like ethical values.
Because the world can feel very driven by pragmatism these days, right? Like what works, what's efficient. But ethics sometimes get lost in that.
And if Pope Francis is being portrayed as this, this Loco de Dios, this person who challenges the norm,
right,
then it really does make you think about like, what is the responsibility of religious leaders and institutions in the world today?
It's a big question.
It is. So just to like touch on some of the really key ideas that we're seeing, there's that tension between faith and reason, which is like so clearly embodied in these two figures, right?
Yeah, the Pope and Cercas, that's a great example.
Like, can you imagine them discussing miracles?
Oh, that would be a fascinating conversation.
Like, that would be like such a clash of worldviews.
You'd have these completely different ways of approaching the very idea of a miracle.
Right. But then there's also these like really humanizing moments.
Okay.
Where you see Pope Francis just in everyday situations.
Like he's not just this distant figurehead.
No, he's a person. And I think that's something everyone can relate to.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we all have those moments where we see someone in authority.
Right.
And they're just like being a normal person.
And it changes your whole perception of them.
Yeah. But, it's not all like sunshine and roses.
Okay.
Cercas doesn't shy away from looking at the church's problems.
So it's not a sugar-coated portrayal.
No, like he's prickle.
Which I think gives the book a lot of credibility, honestly. It shows that he's really grappling with the complexity of it all.
Right. And then there's that question that started it all. Life after death.
Right, his mother's question.
It's so universal.
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't wondered about that at some point?
Right, like that's something everyone can connect with.
Regardless of your beliefs.
No matter what you believe.
That question touches everyone.
Yeah, and then finally there's this concept of the Loco de Dios.
Right, God's mad enough.
As this like disruptive force within that church.
So someone who might actually be able to create change.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful idea.
It is.
And it makes you think about what kind of leadership is needed in religious institutions.
Exactly.
Do we need that disruption sometimes to bring about renewal?
Yeah.
To get back to those core principles?
It's a big question.
It is.
Okay, so to recap for everyone.
Okay.
We have this incredible journey of an atheist going to Mongolia with the Pope.
Right. An unlikely pair.
Driven by this really personal question that I think is universal.
The afterlife.
Yeah, and the book blends all these different genres.
Yeah, we've got the travelogue, the personal essay, the biography, the intellectual autobiography.
It's giving you all these different angles on faith and power.
And that human search for meaning.
And we get to see Pope Francis through Cercas's eyes, which is...
That's the unique part.
Very unique.
That outside perspective.
Yes, and we see Cercas's own, transformation.
Right.
As he's wrestling with these ideas.
It's a journey for both of them in a way.
Yeah, and it's all happening in this moment where these questions are so relevant.
Yeah, the world is changing. People are questioning things.
So I think this book is going to be a really big deal.
I think so too. I mean, what's remarkable to me is just the audacity of it all.
Yeah.
Like this atheist who's going so deep into the heart of the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
Motivated by this desire to comfort his mother.
Right.
It's just so human, so relatable. Yeah. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It makes you think, like, what does it actually mean for someone who doesn't believe in God to go on this kind of quest?
Right. What can we learn from that?
And what can it teach us about our own beliefs, whether we're religious or not?
It's a challenge to our preconceived notions, right? Yes. It's like, how does someone completely outside of faith view those who are deeply religious?
Exactly.
That's a fascinating question.
So if you're interested in this, and I bet you are, look for El Loco de Dios en el fin del mundo.
When it comes out in April?
It's coming out in April 2025. And if you want to get a sense of Javier Cercas' writing, check out some of his other books like Soldados de Salamina or Anatomía de un Instante.
I've heard those are great.
Yeah, he's a really insightful writer.
Yeah.
So yeah, we encourage you to check out this new book and let us know what you think.
Definitely. It sounds like a must read.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.